Minimum wage was $1.60 an hour, and the average car sold for just over $3,500. Ronald Reagan was California's governor, and Agnew and Nixon were in the White House. Oh, and there was not a single language immersion program in any public school in the United States. In 1991, 3 pioneers, all professors from UCLA, Russ Campbell, Andrew Cohen, who's standing up and waving you all now, and Donald Bowen pitched the idea of language immersions to, among others, LAUSD. As expected, LAUSD politely declined. When these 3 visionaries made it to the Unified School District, the welcome was much warmer. The Board of Education was excited about the possibilities, as were the parents, and Principal Vera Jasny embraced this great idea. Shortly thereafter, the United States' first public school language immersion program was born right here in Culver City. The program started with but 1 kindergarten class taught in Spanish at Woody Howell Elementary School. Only students from English-speaking homes were eligible to enroll. Irma Wright was the first teacher, and what a teacher she was. 2 years later, the language immersion program moved to El Marino, where it flourished for 10 years, only to have to move again due to school closures. The language immersion program landed in La Bayona, then moved to El Rincon, ultimately back to El Marino, where it has excelled since 1993. Along the way, in 1991, Japanese was introduced, first at Farragut Elementary School, giving Culver City the finest dual language program anywhere. In fact, in 2009, due to the immense popularity of the language immersion program, a new program was added at La Bayona, starting with 2 kindergarten classes. Today there are 4, next year 6, and we're going to increase exponentially as we go along. Today, approximately 840 elementary school students are enrolled in language immersion, equating to a whopping 30% of our elementary school students. We have a fantastic program today featuring dozens of leaders in the field of immersion education, highlighted by keynote speakers Yang Zhao, the Presidential Chair and Associate Dean of Global Education at the University of Oregon, and United States House Representative Dr. Judy Chu. Now, please join me in welcoming the Director of Foreign Language Education at the Center for Applied Linguistics, Nancy Rhodes, and the Immersion Project Coordinator for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Tara Fortune.
We'll stand here.
We're going to tag team here.
Right. Good afternoon. We're delighted to be here. It's really exciting to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Immersion in the United States. And Immersion is one of the most successful, if not the most successful, language education program for children that we've ever found in public education in the States. So it's always a great pleasure to talk about it and to meet teachers and parents who are very involved in immersion. More mic. We'd like to, in just 20 minutes, is it on? Okay, that works. In the next 20 minutes, we'd like to briefly focus on 4 areas. First, we'd like to provide a very quick historical perspective of immersion, adding on to what Scott has talked about, and then show where the current immersion programs are across the country, and then we'll give you a brief overview of best practices as we thought they were in the early days, and along with the main research questions in the early days, and then we'll view immersion programs by language and compare the growth in immersion to the growth in non-immersion programs nationally. And lastly, we'll talk about the significant changes that have taken place as we consider the future of dual language and immersion in the field. It's really interesting to see, as Scott had mentioned, how immersion got started in the United States. Immersion is based on the Canadian model, that was started by a group of English-speaking parents in a suburb of Montreal in 1965 who felt that their children, their monolingual children, were at a disadvantage in Canada. They spoke with researchers at McGill University who worked with them to develop the immersion model for instructing English-speaking children in French. And this is the model that was duplicated in the US, first in Culver City in Spanish, and then in Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland, and 3 years later in 1974. And Russell Campbell, who you'll see up there on the left, was the professor of applied linguistics at UCLA, who was the first person who really brought immersion to the United States, and his wife, Marge, is sitting right there. I'd like to recognize her. And the other two gentlemen in the picture, Wally Lambert on the right and Dick Tucker on the left, were the two professors at McGill who were the ones who started it in Canada. And I'd like to just quote from Russell Campbell. He said, "On returning from a visit to the St. Lambert French Immersion Program, and after extended consultation with students, parents, teachers, school officials, and McGill University participants, I approached Culver City, California Unified School District authorities to suggest the possible replication with only minor modifications of the St. Lambert program in an American setting." And that's how it all started. So, again, it was Spanish was the language that was selected, and it was one elementary school, so it was a strand within a school, and one classroom per grade, and it started in kindergarten. And as was mentioned, most of the students were monolingual English speakers. And the model that was adapted was fairly similar to the Canadian model, in that it started with 100% in the target language in kindergarten and first grade. Second grade, English language arts was introduced. Third grade, 25% of the day was in English, and by fourth through sixth grade, 50% was in Spanish, 50% was in English. And at the beginning, late entrants were allowed to enter in grades 1 through 3 if they had some background in Spanish. So one of the really exciting things about the Culver City Immersion program was that, as was mentioned, they started with a lot of support from professors and graduate students at UCLA. And Andrew Cohen was mentioned as an assistant professor who's just starting at UCLA, and Ann Snow was a graduate student at UCLA. And because of this support, they were able to do a lot of research, evaluations, annual evaluations of the program, and then this program model was able to spread across the country, I think, because of the strong work that was done at the beginning. So the goals they set were proficiency in Spanish, normal progress through the curriculum, normal progress in the first language, and positive attitude towards Spanish-speaking community, and a positive self-image. And in 1984, Russ Campbell wrote that after 11 years that they were finding consistently high academic performance. The students were exceeding their peers in English language skills, their attitudes towards Mexican American culture, and the language, Spanish language, was more positive than their peers, and then their proficiency in the language for communication and academic purposes was very high.